interesting people and places in the Upstate. I'm Judy, and I'm delighted you joined us. Today, we're visiting Wofford College in Spartanburg, South Carolina, and I have with me the 9th president of Wofford College, Dr. Joe Lesesne. Dr. Lesesne, I'm delighted you're here with us today.
I appreciate having an opportunity to talk with you.
You've been here for a long time now.
I sure have. I came here as a teacher in 1964, so I've been around quite a while.
Well, there's been a lot of changes at Wofford College since you've been here, and I know you've been instrumental, and you also have a wonderful staff who's been very involved in some of those changes. Tell me what you see as some of the most exciting times at Wofford College.
Well, when you reflect over 27 years, there have been a lot of exciting times and a lot of different kinds of times. When I first came to Wofford in the early and mid-60s, we were really still pretty much in the 1950s. It was a quiet campus, all-male student body, and a place that was not too different from the college shortly after World War II. By the late 60s, all of higher education had undergone a tremendous trauma with what was happening with the whole Vietnam War syndrome, and so we had a different type of student body during those years. I'd say more uptight, not quite as relaxed group of students, and a lot of changes on the campus. And then as we moved into the 70s, I think things became less off-campus centered and more on-campus centered again, and it was about in the middle part of that decade that we became a co-educational institution, and that was
about 1975.
Yeah, right. And 1975, really Wofford had women students since the turn of the century, a few at a time, all of them living off campus. And in the early 70s, we had a rather substantial number of commuting women students, but in the middle of the decade, we made the decision to go residentially co-educational, and we had a period of time there in which we had to adjust to that, so that was an exciting time for us. The 1980s have been a good time for the college because I think the college's identity hadn't changed a great deal. During that period, I think the focus of the students underwent some changes during the 80s, but essentially the college, as I look back over it, and maybe it's because I've lived through so much of it, I feel the college really hasn't changed that much in the sense of its its mission and its fundamental purposes. But all during that period, you can very definitely define just a little different ethos of each generation of students. Whereas the college is doing the same thing, basically, as we're doing in the early 60s.
Well, I want you to tell me now, when you first came to Wofford, you came as in what position?
I was in the history department. I was a professor in the history department.
And from there?
Well, from there, I really began part-time work as an assistant dean because we were developing our 414 curriculum at that time, and I was working on the interim program, the 1 month in January. And after a short stint of a year in the development office, our dean, Philip Covington, became ill, and so I wound up having to go back and become the dean for a couple of years, academic dean, and quit teaching as much at that point. And then Paul Harden, who was president, left for a new position as president of SMU, and it happened right at the end of the school year and at a time when we had just been involved in developing a long-range plan, and so I think the board decided that they didn't really want to go outside and look for somebody who hadn't been involved in the college at that time, so I became president in the spring of 1972.
And one of the youngest presidents, if not the youngest.
Well, I don't know whether, I'm not sure youngest of what, but actually, a number of our colleges in South Carolina have historically had young presidents, and one or two of them actually, maybe not at Wofford, but some other places were younger than I was.
Well, I think there's an interesting point in your background that your father was also president of the college here in South Carolina.
Yeah, he was president. Actually, he after I got out of high school, about the time I was graduating from high school, he became president of Upstate College, where he had been teaching.
And he graduated from?
He came to Wofford.
To Wofford.
As his father did.
Yes. Oh, well, that is so interesting. Yeah. And you went to?
I went there.
Yeah. So it was just a flip-flop there.
Yeah, that's right. Didn't know it at the time, but that's right.
Well, I know your father is now president emeritus of
that's right.
the mission. That's very exciting to me.
Yeah. He still lives in Due West. He sort of listens to everything that happens in higher education in South Carolina still.
Well, that is wonderful. Well, now you have a lot of other interests. I read your biography, and you have done so many different things. You're involved in a lot of community activities here in Spartanburg. You're on many different boards. And you're also involved in the reserves. Is that correct?
National Guard.
National Guard.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I've enjoyed those activities. It really is not too far away from working on the college campus, because essentially the president's job is to help interpret the campus to the wider community, and to help to interpret the wider community to the campus. So those things, all of those avenues to help do that. Wofford's tradition has been a tradition, I think, of trying to develop not just academic leadership, but community leadership as well. And one of the major components of our program, we hope, helps develop people who are service-oriented. And so involvement in those activities, I think, is very much in keeping with what Wofford has stood for 100 and whatever number of years.
Well, I think you made an interesting point, because when I was reading all of the background of Wofford, there's so much history there, and it's just, there's so many interesting people that have been involved over the years, and then a lot of famous people. You know, the who's who at Wofford is quite illustrious. And tell us about some of the people that have gone on to do exciting things.
Well, Wofford has had a tremendously varied group of graduates, people who have distinguished themselves in lots of different fields. We've had people who were in the president's cabinet. We've had people who have distinguished themselves certainly in the medical area. We've had people who have been very strong in the academic area. I'm not sure how many now, but probably 400 or so people who are in professorships, and 2 or 3 dozen college presidents and medical school deans. There are lots of business leaders who have made Wofford their alma mater, and we've got a large number of the people who have been leaders in the Methodist Church and other churches who were Wofford alumni. So it's an interesting group of people, and has been since the first graduate. The first graduate was a member of Congress, and he sort of set the mold, and so Wofford people have I think generally been people who have been active in other than just their own professions. It's been a school that seemed, from the earliest time, seen careers not as just the way they made a living, but the way they lived.
Well, I think that since we've been over here today, we have certainly seen how wonderfully kind everyone is. I mean, it's such a pleasant atmosphere, and everybody's so friendly, and it really seems, of course, again, back to all the history and everything, it's hard to believe that it's been here for so many years, and yet it's very contemporary.
Well, our challenge always is to try to maintain the old values and make sure that we are able to deal with the new ideas that are coming out in our society and with higher education. The success that we do that is a pretty good measure of what kind of college we are.
Now the student body is 60 men, 40 women. Is that
That's roughly 60-40. I really haven't counted them this last year, but that's essentially what the breakdown is, and that's dictated basically by dormitory space. And I think that's probably, without any long-range plan making that rigid, that's probably where we're going to be. It sort of settled down to those numbers, and it works out pretty well. And of course, with Converse close by, and Spartanburg Methodist College a mile and a half or so away, and USC Spartanburg, and and the technical college also within a couple of miles of our campus. Spartanburg is much more of a school, a town of education than people realize. There are a lot of students in this community, especially when you consider the size of the percentage of that to the whole population.
Well, I know that I was trying to think back, being from the Greenville area and knowing so many people who came to Wofford, and it's very interesting to see the things that they've gone on to do, and women and men as well. And I think that's really exciting. Also, you're right in that this area has a lot of schools. How did, and I'm going to get into an area that I said I was going to say for a while, because I think that one of the reasons that we wanted to come here and talk with you is because Wofford is getting such national press these days. And for one school in the midst of so many, and of course we have a lot in South Carolina, tell us a little bit about that.
Well, this college has been a good college for a long, long time. And I think it was recognized in sort of pure academic circles for a good while. Certainly in the period of the early part of this century, it was producing a number of Rhodes Scholars out of proportion to its student body. And you mentioned the Who's Who thing. We have had a lot of people who've been distinguished enough to be considered in that sort of framework. Somewhere in the period of the 1920s and 30s, the college received recognition with the Phi Beta Kappa chapter, which sort of established it as one of the leading institutions in the South. That's of liberal arts type. And yet that's a pretty narrow group of people who recognize that. But I think the college's substance has been there for all this time. Probably in the last 10 years, there has been, with our alumni moving to major cities across the country and press coverage being less regional in the way it handles all of its stories, our visibility rose. And I suspect we became much more conscious of the fact that when we went to an alumni meeting in Houston, or we went to an alumni meeting in Atlanta even, and people said, you're from Wolf's College in Spartanburg, North Carolina. That's right. I mean, I think some of our alumni sort of took that right between the ears, and so they decided that they wish we would let people know a little bit more about it. I don't know how you market a college, and to be perfectly honest with you, we did not begin to market the college, but we became, I think, less self-conscious about making available information about the institution, and we had some things that happened to us, 2 or 3 or 4 at one time, that I think are sort of like serendipity. But that probably led us to getting some publicity that we wouldn't have gotten before, and I think a lot of our institutions around in this section of the country have gotten more recognition than before. The South is much more in the mainstream of the country as far as media is concerned than it used to be.
I think so, and I would like to, I know that you're not going to tell us specifically, because I know how you feel about that, and there's a certain amount of privacy involved with it, but in 1990, U.S. News and World Report ranked Wofford #1 among 110 Southern regional liberal arts colleges. That's amazing.
Well, obviously we love that kind of recognition, and far be it from me to argue with him. I think they got it right. I don't know how they came up with that information, and if they hadn't come up with it, I'd have fussed about their methodology, but since they came up with the right answer, well, I'm not going to say anything about that.
Well, right. And also, Barron's educational series has included Wofford in its books listing the most prestigious colleges and the 300 best buys in higher education.
Well, I think, every time we raise tuitions, I worry about pricing ourselves beyond the constituency which I would hope that we would be able to serve, that we would historically serve. But in reality, I think it's to the credit of our board of trustees that while our tuition is awfully high in the minds of anybody who has to pay, a man knows, I know I just sent 4 children to college. We still allow kids SATs are still in the bottom half of the colleges, private colleges in the country, and I think we are an awfully good buy, and I think that people have recognized that, and it's helped our enrollment. I think the fact that we've been as solid a school as we have, as good a school as we've been, and compared to a lot of institutions of about the same quality, we're somewhat cheaper.
How difficult is it for a student to go into Wofford College? What are the requirements?
There's no question that Wofford's student body is made up of some of the stronger students in the region, but I think people very often mark themselves out and say, that's not my college because I didn't do well on the SATs or so forth. We look at the SATs and we're happy to have that as part of the information, and in fact, I think right now we're requiring it as one piece of information. But the key is students' motivation and preparation. If they prepared themselves in high school and are motivated, that'll show in their high school records. And that's really what we go by in trying to select our student body. Is we look at the performance that's been pretty well established, and the SAT can help support that. But we don't have cutoff scores and that sort of thing. We know that as a predictor of success in college, the SAT on a gross basis, you take all the scores together and look at them, you wind up with a pretty good correlation between what people make on the SAT and how they perform. But we also know in individual cases it's not that good a predictor. How well a person did in high school is a better predictor than the SAT. And so we weigh the SAT, but not as heavily as we do what a person has already achieved in high school.
And so you look at the all-around.
Yeah, look at all of it. And we, as I said earlier, Wofford is interested in people who have leadership potential, and that includes their motivation to work in volunteer services, to be involved in their communities, to have been active in trying to better the environment they were in their high school, to participate in those activities. All those things become important, and if a person has done that to the exclusion of getting the academic work done, we know that those people won't succeed here. But if they've done their academic work well and have done that, they're going to be very successful, and we're going to be very happy to see them because they will be part of those students that you were talking about who were friendly out on the campus.
Great. Well, Dr. Lesesne, we're going to take a short break, and we're going to be right back in just a few moments with Upstate Style. So stay tuned.
Hey, buddy, want to make $1 million the easy way? You could inherit it. You could become a movie star. Or you could play the HBO TV Guide Quest for the Best game. Play daily in TV Guide and nightly on HBO. So hold on to that game card for your daily chance to win over 8,000 cash prizes. Play the HBO TV Guide Quest for the Best game and make your first million the easy way. Or try junk bonds. The Sounds of Spring on HBO.
Wait a minute!
You've heard the best, now get the best. Call now for HBO in May.
Welcome back to Upstate Style. I'm visiting today with Dr. Joe Lesesne, who is the president of Wofford College in Spartanburg, South Carolina. Dr. Lesesne, we want to talk a little bit about the history of Wofford. And I know one of the things I read last night, one of the 9 colleges which met in Atlanta in 1895 to organize the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools. That amazes me.
Well, let me say that the college, of course, has been here, 40, 40 years by then. And remember, there were not a lot of colleges in the South, although there had been sort of an outbreak of establishment of colleges somewhere between the middle 1830s and the 1860s, but not a rapid growth of colleges like we saw in the 1960s. Let me just back up a minute. Wofford was founded in 1854. Actually, it started about 1851 with a charter and a sort of a very close Methodist minister who gave up the pastorate to become a businessman, left $100,000 to establish a college in the Spartanburg district for men. And that money was taken, about half of it, $6,000 of it was taken to build the main building and 5 houses on the campus and get set up for a college. The other $6,000 was put into an endowment. And the college had gotten going very well, and then along comes the Civil War, and Wofford's endowment was one of the largest endowments in the country at that time. And shortly before Appomattox, from a fit of Southern patriotism, trustees invested the $50,000 plus in Confederate bonds, and immediately lost them. And college's endowment never, since that day, it's never really recovered. The fact was that during the period of the 1870s, 1880s, Wofford had developed a pretty strong faculty, really. And by 1890, this was, I guess, the first college in this area, University of South Carolina, as well, began to employ PhDs, people who had been trained in the German tradition. And students at Wofford, graduates at Wofford, had begun to people colleges and universities across the South and had some influence in those institutions. So in 1895, when it came time to look at how we're going to accredit these growing institutions, it was only natural that we would be one of them. And the fact was that Wofford faculty pretty well peopled the Vanderbilt, their faculty, were very strong there. Their sort of leading chancellor in its history, the top one was one of our graduates, Chancellor Kirkland. The Methodist Church, which the college now stayed with all its history, had established the first accrediting agency for colleges and universities before that, something called the University Senate. And so it was this group of colleges, when Vanderbilt and Wofford and the other schools that got together to form the Southern Association, used that Methodist Senate model to develop the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools. And other regional organizations then grew as accrediting bodies. And so that's how we happened to be in it, is that we had faculty members who were graduates at a lot of different places, and also that the Methodist institutions, Trinity College and Vanderbilt had been a Methodist college, and Randolph-Macon, with Southern down in Alabama. All those schools had sort of come together to try to get some handle on what we're going to do to establish some quality control over this growing enterprise across the South.
And Wofford already had a nice little history.
That's right. We've been here for a while. That's right. In the 1830s, Davidson had been formed in 1837 up in North Carolina, and Erskine over down due west, and Furman University had started as a seminary in the 20s and became a college about the same time Wofford did. Those institutions, which were sort of antebellum institutions, formed the base, along with the College of Charleston and the South Carolina College, which was now the University of South Carolina, for the education movement in this state and in North Carolina. As the 1890s came along, late 80s and 90s, you saw the development of other institutions like Clemson and Presbyterian College and so forth, and that was a new age of growth. And so people were beginning to say, what are we going to do to try to develop some sort of quality control across this whole system? And that's how that happened in the 90s.
has stayed somewhat small. It's on its original campus, and yet you have marvelous, beautiful buildings. You have a new one going up right behind us.
Yeah. First of all, we are not ideally situated from the standpoint of ability to expand, and so there was a plan in the after World War II to move this campus out into the county and possibly to merge it with Columbia College. In fact, the two colleges operate under its own same administration for the Board of Trustees for a short period of time, both Columbia College and Wofford in the late 1940s. But Wofford, in its planning in the post-World War II period, made it a point that they did not want to change the nature of the institution by expanding. Now, there were a number of reasons that went into that, but when the plans were made in the 1950s about what the college ought to be, and essentially those fundamental decisions have been stuck with since then, it was decided, number one, that we would remain undergraduate, and that we would remain liberal arts. Now, there were opportunities and, in fact, pressures in the 60s to move away from that, because during that period of time, you could have, there were a lot of graduate schools growing, graduate programs being put into place across the South that were needed. There were a lot of state institutions being opened, and this college could have expanded. The decisions not to do that were based on two things, I think. One was the belief that the tradition of the college of being small and personal so those students do know each other and can talk with each other was an important part of that history. And the second thing was that the college really could not be a first-class institution as far, and by this I mean competitive with the best schools in the country, if it fractured its resources. Graduate education is expensive. If we had moved into a broad range of programs, and we had moved into graduate education, we could have probably served our local constituency very well. But we could not have been what we would like to be, and that is comparative with the very best schools in the country. And to do that, given the resources that were available, the decision was made, what we can do is we can do undergraduate education if we focus our resources as well as anybody. If we fracture those resources and go into graduate education and other things, we can be good, but we can't be among the very best. And so that is, so that was the decision, and those decisions have been stuck with over the decades, and I think it was a good set of decisions. But part of those decisions were to maintain the size of the student body, so you have personal relationships between not only faculty and students, but also students and students.
Dr. Lesesne, I hate to tell you, but we are out of time, and I'm so fascinated. There were so many other things I wanted to ask you about, and we run out of time. But I will hopefully we'll come back, and if you'll allow us to.
We'll be more than happy.
We're honored that you allow us to come
Well,
back.
thank you. We're honored to be on your program.
And we're delighted to have such a wonderful institution in our area. And thank you again.
Thank you.
Best wishes to you for continued success. Thank you, our audience, for joining us with Upstate Style. Stay tuned for another show next week, and have a great day.
Brokaw didn't return our call. Jennings remembered a prior engagement in Cleveland. Dan Rather wanted a heck of a lot more money. Let's face it, the networks just didn't have the guts. Night Rap, is it the funniest show on television or just the horrible truth? Don't miss this all-new series premiering Friday, April 12th on HBO.
Comedy reaches a new high and evil a new low.
You master.